I think this is one of our most actionable, useful, valuable shows that we do at this point in the offseason with Mike Renner, who's been an absolute assassin for us over the past couple years, giving us an edge on our opponents. I'll be taking notes for a lot of this show.
We are going to dissect every notable skill position prospect in the 2026 NFL Draft. Mike will put each prospect into tiers ranging from the S tier, the best, the elite, down to the F tier, the worst day 3 prospect types at best. So without further ado, let's get into it here at the wide receiver position. We're going to go in a somewhat randomized order here as Mike puts these guys into tiers. We're going to start, Mike, with Carnell Tate, 6'2", 192, out of Ohio State. Go ahead, Renner. What tier would you have Carnell Tate in?
Carnell Tate is an A tier. I think it's a pretty strong A tier of wide receivers this year. I don't, just spoiler alert, don't have an S tier wide receiver this year. I don't think there's a true top 10 guy in this class, but I think there's a lot of first round guys in this class. He's one of them. I love his, like any Ohio State wide receiver, I love the attention to detail. I love the route running ability. Those Brian Hartline coach guys, you can just set your watch to them, the way they get in and out of their breaks, the efficiency with which they run routes. I thought he also made a big leap from sophomore year to junior year in that regard, which I love to see out of prospects. I love to see that progression because it means the guy's putting in work. That means he is doing what's necessary, because no one comes into the NFL, or very few guys come into the NFL as finished products capable of being immediate impact players. Long, rangy, downfield type of wide receiver, very productive in that regard, over 18 yards per catch this past season. He tracks the ball extremely well. I think where he wins, where he's exceptional, is his ball skills and body control. He can pluck it out of the air as good as anyone in the class, pluck balls outside his frame as good as anyone in the class, work the sideline extremely well, work the vertical tree. When he's hip to hip on a guy in the sidelines on back shoulder throws or going over the top, he makes a lot of those plays. Now, the only thing really holding him back from that top 10 spot, from getting in the S tier, he's just an average athlete. I don't think he's anything special from a twitch standpoint, from a true vertical speed standpoint. Ran a 4.53 at the combine. That's just kind of who he is. My comp for him was Corey Davis, but I think he's a little bit better even than a Corey Davis was coming out. But that's kind of who you're getting. You're getting just a very well-rounded wide receiver who may not be Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, but I feel really good about him being at least a high-end number 2 at the NFL
level. There was some controversy about Carnell Tate's 40 time. There was like a big argument about it. Last year you were on top, Mike Renner, you were on top of Matthew Golden having a Fugazi 40 time, which some of us, because we were listening to you, we didn't fall for that Fugazi 40 time. Some of us, Leone, did fall for Matthew Golden's Fugazi 40 time. What is the deal with Carnell Tate's 40 time?
That is a real 40 time. And you know how I know? Because he could have ran it on his pro day and done better, but he didn't. Ohio State fast track, didn't retest there. So that tells me that's about the range that Carnell Tate is going to be running. So 4.53. And it's, Mike Evans ran a 4.5, right? When you are a taller, longer guy, long legs, long limbs, you don't always get the best of starts. And his 10 split wasn't great, but I think he can still win down the field with that time at the NFL level. It's just going to come more the way Mike Evans does, with like contested production, the fact that he can out-muscle guys at the catch point. So I still love him as a prospect. It's just, if he ran, if he was a 4.4 guy, he'd be a top 10 pick. He's not, so he's probably going to be more of a just outside the top 10. But again, one of the highest floor receivers in this class.
Man, every mock I've seen has him going in the top 10. Okay. And I think that speaks to the class a little bit, but also, it's surprising to me because his production profile, and that's the thing that I get hung up on Carnell Tate. It's the production profile for a guy that's going to go in the top 10. He has never had more than 52 catches in a college season in the biggest games, against Texas last year, 2 catches. Against Indiana in the Big Ten championship, 4 catches for 45 yards and a touchdown. Against Miami in the playoff game that they lost, 3 catches, 37 yards, no touchdowns for Carnell Tate. I don't see guys go 5th overall, 6th overall, 7th overall with this kind of production profile. So I know he played with Jeremiah Smith. I get that's everyone's excuse for the production. It just scares me a little bit. Do you have any concerns that he never actually put it in the box score, Renner?
I do. And that's why, again, I don't have him as a top 10 player. I see this wide receiver class kind of similar to, let's say, the 2023 class, where there was a bunch of first rounders. I think it ended up being 4 first rounders that year, but there wasn't one until pick 20. That was JSN, Quentin Johnson, Zay Flowers, where it's like they weren't top 10 guys necessarily in terms of their profile. Now, JSN's obviously outperformed that since, but like these aren't top 10 sort of wide receivers. If Carnell Tate goes top 10, it's for 2 big reasons. One is that wide receivers just getting paid, right? Wide receivers getting like $40 million. So if you can even get like a solid number 2, those guys are $30 million players, and he's a really high floor guy, and the desperation exists for certain teams in that top 10, like the Saints, like the Browns, who just really need one. So he's high floor, has that, but this isn't the traditional profile of a top 10 wide receiver, in my opinion.
And I don't want to spoil the future here, but Carnell Tate is not Mike Renner's number 1 wide receiver in this class. In fact, Carnell Tate is not Mike Renner's number 2 wide receiver in this class. Let's keep it moving here. The second wide receiver we're going to look at is Makai Lemon, 5'11", 192 out of USC. Everyone's giving this guy the Amon-Ra St. Brown comp, Renner. 5'11", similar to Amon-Ra, super quick. Played mostly slot at USC. I see why he gets this comp a lot. What tier would you have Makai Lemon in, and thoughts on him?
He's an A tier, but to me, he's even behind Carnell Tate. And I actually wrote down Amon-Ra St. Brown's numbers because I think it's an interesting comp, but I want to just temper expectations because most of the guys in this mold, so he's a slot only. That's what he did at USC. He has only just over a 6-foot wingspan. He doesn't have that ability to go far outside his frame. So he's going to play over the middle of the field. And I think he's very good at that. But he's 5 pounds lighter than Amon-Ra St. Brown was coming out. And what makes Amon-Ra so special, and what makes a lot of the guys kind of in this mold that produce the way he does, your Puka Nakua's, I think Emeka Egbuka last year was kind of in that mold, is they're big, strong guys. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 20 bench press reps coming out. His father was a Mr. Olympia, right? Like he is a ox of a slot receiver. Makai Lemon's 192. Makai Lemon didn't do any bench press reps at the combine or his pro day. He does not have that same strength. And, me and Evan were at the game against Notre Dame when he got locked up by Leonard Moore. I mean, that was worrisome tape for a guy that you're going to draft. I've seen in top 10 in some mocks, right? Like he does not have the pure mano-a-mano one-on-one ability that you think of when you think of a top 10 sort of wide receiver. So that's the worrisome thing to me. But outside of that, all that being said, he does everything right. Like he is one of those guys who is going to do the little things. He works zone coverage over the middle of the field really well. He really doesn't drop passes. He's physical at the catch point. He's an easy mover in and out of breaks, even if he's not super explosive and super speedy down the football field. I think he's just a very good, well-rounded football player. The comp I had for him was a Golden Tate. He's just Golden Tate was a multiple time 1,000-yard receiver. He just wasn't, the way Amon-Ra St. Brown is a, all-pro year in, year out. I think that's what Makai Lemon can be, but that's just, you have to go in knowing that you have a role like that for him on your football team that's going to be a slot-heavy offense. So another guy who's super high floor. I think he is, he's going to be a good NFL wide receiver. It's just I don't know if his ceiling is truly special given his physical tools.
The good news for us in fantasy circles is that a guy like this can jump right in and be productive right away and, carry that high floor and be awesome in PPR leagues.
Yep. I mean, Makai Lemon is going to go in the first round, and so he's going to be someone that is going to be very much in the mix year one in fantasy, as Evan alluded to. Wide receiver 3 we're going to talk about here is a super interesting one. Jordyn Tyson, 6'2", 203 out of Arizona State. The story here, Renner, has just been injuries. He's missed multiple games in all 4 of his college seasons. Didn't participate in the combine. I mean, we've barely seen this dude due to injury, but when he does play, it's been pretty special, in my opinion. Renner, what do you think of Jordyn Tyson?
He's my wide receiver 1. I think of all these guys, like I've been saying, they're kind of complementary number 2s. He's the one that actually looks like a number 1 wide receiver. Like what you think of when you think of that sort of guy. He has elite shake off the line of scrimmage. He has elite ability to manipulate at the top of his routes and send guys the opposite way of where he's going. I mean, he just has what it looks like at the next level. The guys like Justin Jefferson, the guys like Devontae Adams, that sort of bounce and movement side to side that they play with, he has that. And then the body control to make plays outside his frame. I mean, his brother plays for the Cavs. He looks like a basketball player out there. And that's what you want at wide receiver, right? It's a lot of crossovers to get open. And he does that better than anyone in this class. I thought his hands improved a lot from 2024 to 2025. Only one drop this past year, but the injuries are huge, man. Like if he doesn't test pre-draft, he's my wide receiver 1 right now. But if he doesn't test pre-draft, I would rather have the other guys given the risk.
Yeah,
he has not.
He said, for what it's worth, he said that like a week before the draft, he's going to work out.
April 17th.
Yeah.
So if that happens and it looks good, he's going to be my wide receiver 1. But if that continues to get pushed back, because it really was only a hamstring, it was a hamstring at the end of this year. If he's still hampering a hamstring, here we are in mid-March, that's worrisome. And he tore an ACL in 2022. He broke his collarbone in 2024. The injuries track record here is strong, and it doesn't help that he's not the most physical guy, right? He is much more of a finesse type of wide receiver. Comp I had from his Jerry Jeudy, and now Jeudy, his shortcomings aren't necessarily talent related, but he's also not the most physical guy, right? At the catch point, he's going to make a lot of, he's going to get overpowered a lot. And you saw that on Tyson.
Steve Smith loves calling him out for that.
Yeah. So he's not, even without the injury, I think he would not be a slam dunk top 10 on tape, but he would be the closest guy. And probably, it's always hard to say if he didn't have any of the injuries, but if he didn't have any of the injuries, I would take him in the top 10, I think, in this draft class.
I feel like this workout could have a big impact on where he's drafted too.
Yep.
I mean, if he goes, shows that he's healthy, performs like people would anticipate. I mean, it's not just you who has Jordyn Tyson, despite this scary injury track record, as his overall wide receiver 1. Trevor Sikkema, PFF, also has him as his wide receiver 1. I mean, I've seen several really highly regarded analysts having Jordyn Tyson as their wide receiver 1. If NFL teams feel that way and he goes and he's healthy, maybe he could be a top 15, top 10 pick. If not, who knows where he's going to go.
Yeah. You guys know I like to look at all these draft prop markets, and we'll actually have a show on this coming up in a week or two. But yeah, I mean, Carnell Tate is the overwhelming favorite to be the first wide receiver off the board, minus 300, minus 400 or so. Jordyn Tyson was intriguing to me at like plus 375 to be the first wide receiver because of what Evan said. I mean, there's so many people, Renner, Trevor, a ton of other people have Jordyn Tyson as the best wide receiver in this class. Just no one thinks he's going to be that. That's actually going to happen because of all the injury stuff. But all it takes is a team to get comfortable with the injury stuff, and you can certainly make a case here. So I am really intrigued by Jordyn Tyson. Also in fantasy, like the later he goes in the actual NFL draft, that will correlate with his ADP in fantasy. And again, if he goes late, teens, 20s or something like that, it's just going to be because of the injury concerns. And like, that's usually something I'm willing to be somewhat aggressive on in fantasy. Hey, let me take this guy, be greedy when others are fearful on their recurring injury stuff. All right. Let's go to Omar Cooper, 6 foot, 199 out of Indiana. I've seen some Deebo Samuel comps here. Renner, get the ball behind the line of scrimmage, maybe get some carries, make some guys miss. Thoughts on Omar Cooper?
That's the type of wide receiver he is, right? And it's, Deebo comp. So I think someone gets it every single year. There's only one Deebo Samuel. And if you've ever seen Deebo Samuel up close, you know why. It's because he's 225 pounds. I mean, Deebo Samuel is a different cat. Omar Cooper is not that. He's 6 foot, 199. But that's the mold and type of wide receiver you're getting. And why I'm so high on him and why he's an A-tier guy for me is that he's just elite after the catch. I mean, and not only in the make you miss, but like he will have guys hanging off of him and contort his body to shrug them and make plays. The body control it takes, the contact balance is exactly then, the same traits it takes to get open in the NFL too. And so you see that a lot. And now in Indiana's offense this past year, he was just a slot. And we'll talk about when we talk about Fernando Mendoza, but it was kind of a gimmicky offense. I think that's a little underrated how much they just ran RPOs and screens. And so his route tree wasn't great. But in 2024, he was actually a primary outside wide receiver, and he averaged over 21 yards a catch. He was a real downfield threat on tape then. He ran a 4.42 at the combine. I don't think he's just a slot at the next level, but a lot of that underneath route tree, a lot of those slants, whips, things of that nature, he runs at a really high level. He can be physical along his routes. I don't think he's as polished as the guys I have ahead of him here. He's the back end of this A tier for me. But I think, again, another guy who has a high floor just because he's so physically gifted, because the contact balance and post catchability are so good, because the hands are so good. I go to the Penn State game. He made the catch at the back of the end zone, tap the foot down for the game winner there. There's just a lot to like about him. Super competitive, that he's an easy role right away in the NFL, given his skill set.
Analytical football analysis will often point to guys who break out at an early age. And there's a bunch of receivers that broke out in this class at like 18, 19. It's part of the reason why this is regarded as a pretty strong wide receiver class. Omar Cooper did not, though.
Yep.
Omar Cooper, I guess you could maybe kind of say that he broke out as a junior when he averaged that 21 yards per catch, but he only had 28 catches in that season. And he didn't really get going until this past year. Does that concern you that it took him a while to really get going, Omar Cooper?
It does. And I think that's why he's the back end of this tier, because he, of all these guys, was the latest breakout. But I think the interesting thing about him is he actually averaged over 2 yards per catch, or 2 yards per route every single year of his career. So when he was called upon, he was productive, and it took Curt Cignetti coming to Indiana and actually starting to make good decisions with this offense for him to flourish and starting to really develop these guys. But he was a 4-star receiver. Like he was a real high school, highly rated recruit that you might not think of when you think of Indiana, but he was a pre-Cignetti recruit. So I like I said, I am a little worried about that. That obviously matters to me, and we're going to talk about that with Casey Concepcion. But with Cooper specifically, the tape was just so good this past year, and the athlete's so good that I think he's still going to work out.
All right. We have 4 guys in the A tier so far: Tyson, Tate, Lemon, and Cooper. Let's go to our 5th wide receiver to talk about. It's Denzel Boston, tall, 6'4", 212, out of Washington. Of course, played early in his career with Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk. Did not do much his first 2 years. Production was better, but I would say still not great after those guys were gone. Renner, thoughts on Denzel Boston out of Washington?
Boston is the quintessential early day 2, he's B-tier guy for me, power forward type of wide receiver. It feels like every year. Last year was Jaden Higgins. You get like Michael Pittman in that range, Keon Coleman in that range, T. Higgins in that range. It's just like that's the range these guys go in. They're not great separators. He doesn't get open super easily on tape, but he's physical. He's 6'4". He's 212. He uses his size really well. He uses his hands to keep defenders at bay. He knows how to run routes. His dad was David Boston. His dad's a former NFL wide receiver. It seems like there's a strong track record of former NFL players' kids in the NFL of late. And it's because, skill still matters, and these guys are doing it from a really early age. So you really see the skill there on tape. I just worry about the athlete, right? He did not he did not run a 40 pre-draft, even though he did everything else. That to me says it wasn't going to be fast. And you watch his tape and it was not fast. He doesn't get off the line particularly well. He very much is a pigeonholed to kind of a possession-y type of outside wide receiver. And, while Washington wasn't a high-level passing attack the past 2 years without Kalen DeBoer, he didn't produce at a super high level either. So I don't think he ever went over 1,000 yards in his career. So for all those reasons, good prospect, just to me, not a first rounder. If he goes first round, I'd be very surprised.
All right. The first B tier here. Evan, any thoughts on Boston before we move on?
I just want to say for our Zoomer fans, David Boston was an absolute beast. Now that may have been a little bit, synthetic. Some of it might have been synthetic, but David Boston was an absolute animal. T. Higgins, I think, is like the perfect combination or comparison. 6'4", Denzel Boston probably going to be drafting the same range that T. Higgins was as well.
All right, let's go to the 6th wide receiver here. And this is actually Renner's top. It's actually second, not top. Second wide receiver in this class, which is going to raise some eyebrows here. Renner, KC Concepcion.
This is just, I feel like the way I kind of ranked the top receivers is just my type of wide receiver, me ranking my types of wide receiver, because I had very similar grades on all these guys, but I trend more towards guys that are separators, guys that get open on their own, that can create space on their own. And when you watch KC Concepcion's tape, the guy gets open. He's a high level athlete. And what I love about him is that, 6 foot 191, but he plays, he gets through contact really well along his routes. It doesn't really phase him. He doesn't lose a lot of speed when guys get their hands on him, and he's aggressive getting hands off of himself. So another guy that, he had 845 yards as a freshman. He was the focal point of NC State's offense as a true freshman. Obviously, the next year he's still running a super limited slot route tree, and that's why he wasn't considered a top prospect coming in this class. But he played outside wide receiver this year. He's attacking down the football field, and he was getting open, against the top corners he faced on tape. He gave them true problems. The only thing really keeping Concepcion from being considered, I think, by a lot of people in this spot is the ball skills. He dropped a lot of passes. I think just under 10% drop rate for his career. I thought he was much better in contested situations this year than he was in the past, but that's worrisome. He kind of is a clapper. He doesn't really get the hands behind the football, and so he's just going to drop some passes. But I think he at least attacks the ball well, and I think I saw much more of a willingness. And he's another guy who's young. He's a third-year guy coming out. I buy what the athlete can be at the next level, and I think, again, I trend more towards the separators at the position, and I think he can be just a really high-end separator in the NFL. My comp for him was Calvin Ridley.
Interesting.
Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, Calvin Ridley, elite separator. It's not surprising that the way that you describe KC Concepcion, Mike Renner, that Matt Harmon loves this guy, because Matt Harmon, his whole system is based on looking at separation, who can create separation on specific routes. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that there's data that shows that the drop rate is not necessarily, I mean, it's certainly a statistic that you want to know about. You'd rather know about it than not know about it. But it's something that you can overcome as you move forward to get that NFL coaching. But I love to hear about the separation skills.
Well, I'll say two things. First, I don't know if you're aware of this, Renner, but the data, the analytics scouts, like people that don't watch tape, they just have models, love KC Concepcion.
Oh, that's good to know.
And Renner is obviously doing this more from a
super early breakout age too.
Exactly. Super early breakout age. And just really checks all the boxes for what you want to see from an analytical profile in Concepcion. The tape guys, this Renner's maybe one of the first tape guys I've seen that's really, really, really high on Concepcion. For example, Daniel Jeremiah has Concepcion 33rd overall, but he notes in his write-up that it's a lot about the drops, he would have him much higher if it was not for the drops. So I think it's super interesting. And if there's going to be tape bros on Concepcion, and I know the data bros are on Concepcion, I want to see where he goes in the draft, but this could be a real sleeper for both redraft and dynasty. And so I'm super intrigued on where Concepcion ends up landing. Let's go to Chris Bell, 6'2", 222 out of Louisville. This was a guy, we did a rookie mock draft, and I was actually surprised that nobody took Chris Bell in that rookie mock draft that we did. Renner, what tier would you have Chris Bell in here?
I would have him in the C tier. And some of that's because he tore his ACL in December. I think he's going to miss most of the offseason. I don't know when he's going to come back from that, but obviously you never want, it's always a concern when drafting a guy early on. And even before that, though, I saw a guy who has really intriguing physical tools, but I see as more of a project. So combine the fact that I think he's a bit of a project with the fact that he's going to miss an offseason of training right now, and that's worrisome for me projecting to the NFL and ultimately what his role ends up becoming. I think with his size, so he's 6'2", 222, a lot of people want to give him the A.J. Brown comp, and that's popular for guys that size. But more often than not, guys in that role that we've seen of late have struggled because it's hard to get open when you're that big. I think his route tree and how he plays is similar to a DK Metcalf. He's much more linear than he is shifty, make guys miss the way A.J. Brown does. I think this past year, the biggest leap he took, so his production obviously took a big jump, and that was, with Tyler Shuck not being there, right? So with probably lesser quarterback play, he still took a big leap. It was because he finally started to use his size. He started to really, in terms of his releases, just push corners off of him. He really started to get more physical, a little better after the catch because of that, started to lean into it. But I still see a guy who needs quite a bit of refinement, who isn't going to be a full route tree runner, who, when you think of probably closer to guys like, Treylon Burks than an A.J. Brown in terms of guys in that mold. And again, it's a mold that hasn't had much success after DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown a few years back.
You know what else has a pretty poor track record of success is just guys that go to the NFL and miss their entire rookie season.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just look at it from a probability standpoint, dudes that don't play as a rookie for whatever reason, injury, suspension, whatever, like their odds of success plummet. And I'm worried that Chris Bell is going to miss his entire rookie season.
Yeah.
And maybe that'll give him, some team an opportunity. Oh, maybe if he's available in the third round or something like that, we'll take a shot on him. But I mean, it's going to hurt his draft stock and it's going to hurt his probability because those guys they face lower odds of succeeding in the NFL.
Yeah. And I'm sure teams are tracking his rehab here closely. We'll see how it's going on Chris Bell. Let's go to Germie Bernard, 6'1", 206 out of Alabama. Renner, what tier would you have Germie Bernard in?
I'm in my B tier, and he's actually the top of my B tier. I think he is just an incredibly high floor football player. He's been very productive, dating back to 2023 when he was at Washington, and actually part of that rotation that had, all NFL guys. He had 430 yards that year, 35 catches as a sophomore. He was actually a factor for that offense and productive in it, behind guys like Jalen Polk and Rome Odunze. So even since then, and then he follows Kalen DeBoer to Alabama, and it doesn't really take a huge next step, but I just think he is very well-rounded. 6'1", 206, good size, easy mover. You watch him on tape, and it just looks effortless for him. He ran a 4.48, he had a 6.713 3-cone at that size, which is a really elite figure for a guy over 200 pounds. And that's kind of who he is. He can run a full route tree. He can really break off a dig route and get over the middle of the football field. And then after the catch, he broke 17 tackles this past year. He is very crafty. So my comp for him is a Robert Woods. I think there's just a very clear path to this guy having a solid role on a team in the NFL. It's obviously, the more someone features kind of the middle of the football field, I think the more productive he'll be. I think his weakness is really running the vertical tree on the outside. That's where he's not great at. So I think if he can move more towards the slot, his production will get even better at the NFL level.
Very likely to go off the board in round on day 2, it seems like, here for Germie Bernard. Let's go to Chris Brazzell, 6'4", 198 out of Tennessee. I feel like we get into this every year with these Tennessee guys, Renner, where it's really hard to evaluate them. And at this point, given like some of the failures from a lot of these Tennessee guys, I feel like the sentiment out there is, well, he's a receiver for Tennessee. It's hard to evaluate, and the history in the NFL sucks, so I'm going to be out on this guy. I feel like that's the sentiment out there on Chris Brazzell. What do you think about him?
Well, Renner, first, could you talk about why that is? Why is this Tennessee off? Yeah, go ahead.
So Tennessee, Josh Heupel, the offense there is, if you think back to like old school Baylor when was like KD Cannon coming out, like they are running go balls, they're running screens, they're running slants, they're running posts. And outside of that probably makes up, and it hitches as well. So like those routes make up about, 80 to 90% of the route tree. It's just very, especially with Brazzell, he's just an outside guy there. He's not even the slot, which slot is a little bit more varied, but like that's all you're doing. And so, yeah, you can see some movement skills on that. And obviously when you get to the goal line, there are other routes on tape that they're running, but it's hard to evaluate when you only see a handful of them all season long or a couple of them a game. So on those, though, this is, for my money, he's the most talented of those Tennessee guys that have come out of late. I think he is the most physically gifted. He's the loosest athlete. On the other stuff, he looks the best. I just worry about, is this guy going to put in the work? Like he already had a driving with a suspended license charge where he didn't show up in court. And it's like, that was after he transferred from Tulane to Tennessee. And that was kind of like his big shot at the big time. And that's what you're doing to start off your time there. He was really bad actually last year in his first year at Tennessee, really inconsistent, a lot of drops. This year looked like a different guy, but he's 6'4", 198. He doesn't look like he's spent a minute in the weight room his time in college, which is, I think, to me, the biggest thing is that he's such a good athlete, so physically gifted, but he doesn't look like he's put in the time to really refine his craft. And that's what I worry about. I think that's why he's a late day 2 for me, even if talent-wise, he looks like he could be an alpha number 1. He has the goods in that regard. And he can really go up and moss guys. I mean, he can jump. He can pluck the ball out of the air. There is impressive highlight reel stuff on his tape. I just think I'm out on receivers like this. Like, there's just not been a strong track record of guys with this many kind of red flags in their profile coming out.
Yeah. I think there's going to be like a really wide range of outcomes here. The YouTube bros need to know, Renner, which tier will you have Chris Brazzell in?
He's a C tier. I would probably prefer him to Chris Bell, but it's probably still back into the C tier for me.
All right.
The sample size of the recent Tennessee receivers not succeeding isn't that big. The last 4 wide receivers that come out of Tennessee that were drafted, Velus Jones, he's a special teamer. Jalen Hyatt, I mean, I'm surprised he's even still in the league. Cedric Tillman, he's flashed a little bit. And then Dante Thornton. I mean, do you think that Chris Brazzell reminds you at all of Dante Thornton? I mean, Dante Thornton could run like the wind and is huge and tall and lanky, but can't play at all.
No, he's a much looser athlete. Thornton was stiff. Like Thornton was not able to sink and really, run more than just a go route, right? I think Brazzell can do a little bit more. He's just not polished enough for me to get excited about.
It is the offseason, of course, but thanks to our partners at DraftKings, football never sleeps. Early Bird Best Ball is back. Get a head start on the season and compete for your share of $1 million in total prizes before the rest of the field even jumps in. If you are new to Best Ball, it is my personal favorite form of fantasy because it's only the best part, the draft. No waivers, no trades, no setting your lineup. So download the DK Daily Fantasy app today and draft your early bird best ball lineup now. Drafts stay open until the season kicks off, so sign up using the link in the show notes or the QR code on the screen to take your shot at a share of $1 million in prizes in early bird best ball. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. 18 plus in most states. Restrictions apply. Terms at DraftKings.com. Sponsored by DraftKings. All right. Let's get into some a little bit more off the board guys here that maybe Renner is higher on than market. Antonio Williams, 6 foot, 187 out of Clemson. Slot guy. Production was never that like off the charts. Renner strikes me though that you are higher on him than market. What tier would you have Antonio Williams in?
I would have him in the B tier, and I have him right behind Germie Bernard in my ranking, so ahead of Denzel Boston. I think he's a guy that could even be better at the NFL level than he was in college. The comp I have from him is Jaden Reed. I think he's very tough. He's very kind of plays above his weight class. He's willing to work the middle of the football field. And I don't think, despite the size maybe suggesting he's a slot, I think he could play on the outside as well, or at least like in those tight split offenses, he can do a lot of things. I think he's a complete tree route runner. He's very efficient in terms of hitting his landmarks, giving quarterbacks targets. And you watch Clemson's offense. So he went down week 1, came back week 4. Clemson's offense without him was terrible this year. And I think it was a big reason why, is because he's the security blanket for them over the middle of the football field. Clay Klubnik looked lost without him. And he was an early production guy. His freshman year, he had 75 targets, 56 catches, 604 yards for Clemson. So like day one was an impact player for this offense. And I think the fact that he didn't take a next step in his production, to me, is probably more indicative of Clemson and their offense than really his skill. Testing numbers are great. 4.41, 39.5-inch vertical, 10.4 broad jump. So a guy who can really get down the football field, even if he wasn't used in that regard. So I just think a lot to like for a guy. And another player that I just feel is a pretty safe bet to translate at the next level.
We're NFL guys, and we're covering the NFL during the college football season. I mean, I pay attention to Notre Dame. Levitan pays attention to Penn State. But, that's about the extent of it during the NFL season. So our time to catch up on what happened during the college football season is now, leading into the NFL draft. And there are so many highly rated dudes from Clemson in the draft. What TF happened at Clemson last year?
I talked about this on a pod a couple months ago. I think it was Greg Gabriel's pod, the former Bears scout. I was like, Clemson has, in terms of guys who early on in their careers looked like they were going to be top prospects, to then how they ended up being prospects, they have the worst track record of anyone over the past 5 to 6 years. I mean, so many guys have come through, been like high 4-star or 5-star recruits, looked really good early on, and then just never developed. Their track record of development is probably fighting with Penn State's for some of the worst in college football from early in their careers to late. So I think that's the biggest thing, is people are like, these Clemson guys are more talented than how they actually got developed at Clemson.
By the way, Evan, Antonio Williams, I believe, was primary punt returner for Clemson this year, which I know makes Evan very excited.
Move him up the ranks.
All right, let's go to, here's Antonio Williams, 6'0", 187. This guy is 5'9", 177. Zachariah Branch, kind of a controversial prospect here out of Georgia. Renner, what tier would you have Zachariah Branch in?
I'm at the back end of my B tier. I think if I had to, and if I had a heavy slot role in my offense, because that's how I see a slot, I would take him at the back end of the second round. He's really intriguing athlete. 4.35 at the combine and did 20 bench press reps. You hear 177, you think he's probably, skinnier. It's like, this guy is rocked up. He is built kind of like a running back. And I think you talk about the combine, his dad was a personal trainer. He's been training literally since he was, young. So for this, and it looks like it, he plays really physical for his size. The only thing is, his production is so fake. He had 54% of his career receptions were screens. 54%. Now, he started his career at USC, Georgia this last year, and Georgia, their offense was hard to watch. I mean, they did not. There's a lot of wide receiver prospects from Georgia of late, and I don't think any of them were really utilized to their best. And I think Branch chiefly among them. I think he's a better route runner than he gets credit for, than that screen number suggests. And I think he's just really good in short areas. I think with his play strength, with his quickness, with his ability to snap off routes and really run like a hard, out route and get lateral quickly, I think he can be a volume guy. It's just not a huge catch radius. 6-foot wingspan is adequate, right? That's kind of in the range of Lad McConkey has a 6-foot wingspan. There are guys at the NFL in that, Zay Flowers does too, like that can be productive there, but it's harder to when you don't have big catch radius. But I think he could be like a Wan'Dale Robinson at the next level. And really, if you are going to feature him a ton on screens like they did in college, he'll be very productive on them. He's an elite screen and yak weapon. So this talented guy that I think is going to play above his size.
Yeah, Adam hates Wan'Dale Robinson. So
the thing that concerns me about these guys is as the NFL goes to more heavy formations, more 2 tight end, more 3 tight end, when you can only play the slot, you can get squeezed on playing time. Now, there's plenty of teams out there.
We saw it with Josh Downs this past year.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of teams that are going to still stick with a lot of 11 personnel, 3 wide receiver personnel. But I don't give these teams a lot of credit for being sharp enough to understand this. And so I'll be very curious where Branch lands here and what kind of team takes him. Because if it's a smart team that understands what they're getting, I think it's probably a good pick. if it's going to be someone and he's going to play, 50% of the snaps in a best case scenario, it's not that exciting, obviously.
I'm also just interested to see where in the draft, like his actual draft slot lands, because I could see some team falling in love with the speed. Wide receivers that are fast tend to get drafted higher than expectations. Could he go in the 30s? Could he go in the 40s? Or could he go like late on day 2?
Yeah.
I feel like his draft range is big, and I'm with you. He's maybe one of the most landing spot dependent players, landing spot dependent prospects in the draft at wide receiver.
Yeah, Branch did not make Daniel Jeremiah's latest top 50 players. Germie Bernard did. So yeah. All right. Speaking of small guys here, let's go to Brenen Thompson, 5'9", 164. This strikes me as another Renner special here. Brenen Thompson didn't do much of anything until he got to Mississippi State as a senior. He goes off for 57 catches, over 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns off that small frame. Renner, what tier for you on Brenen Thompson?
He's in my B tier. I have him just ahead of Zachariah Branch. And for fantasy, honestly, I think Branch is probably a better option. I don't think he's going to be much of a viable option in that regard. But for like on the field, I would value him at the back end of the second round because he's the fastest guy in this draft class. We're at 4.26. He has elite juice and not just long speed, but like ability to run after the catch or separate at the intermediate level. He's very much he could be a Hollywood Brown type of wide receiver in the NFL. And he's kind of the opposite of Zachariah Branch in that he was very productive, but didn't get any screens. He actually only got 3 screens all last year. So his 57 catches, his over 1,000 yards, it came as being an outside wide receiver, having to win one-on-one against corners in the SEC. And he did a lot. His ability to just get down the football field is so special. And I think he tracks the ball so well that someone's going to fall in love with him and just have a role where it's like, hey, this guy's going to draw attention when you have that level of speed. So I don't project him to like be a 1,000-yard wide receiver at the NFL level, but if he's 40 catches for 800 yards consistently, that's going to have a lot of value for someone.
Yeah, it always scares me, these like outlier guys, like, oh, he's going to be the next Deshaun Jackson. He's going to be the next Tyreek Hill, and now for this guy, people are like, oh, in a best case scenario, he'll be like Tank Dell. Those are like the best case outcomes for guys at this size for sure. But
sounds like Andy Reid's going to draft this guy.
All right. Well, we have 2 Notre Dame bros here on the show. We would be remiss if we did not bring up Malachi Fields, 6'5", 218, out of Notre Dame. Try not to be too biased here, Renner, and give your tier for Malachi Fields.
I actually feel like I'm lower on him than a lot of people. I have him in the C tier. He's more towards the top of the C tier. I think he's a 3rd rounder. I don't think what he was at Notre Dame is what he is in the NFL. He was an outside wide receiver, vertical tree. When they saw man coverage, they threw him go balls. And he can really, at the catch point, he's awesome. His ball skills, he has some catches that are just unbelievable. The way he attacks the football is great. And at the Senior Bowl, he was the best wide receiver there. I thought he had the best week of practices. But to me, he's much more where he really is impressive is the fact that he has really loose hips for a guy that size. He has really good ball skills. He has a really big catch radius, and he can work the middle of the football field. He's strong. So to me, he's like a Keon Coleman type. And now I think some of Keon Coleman's shortcomings, again, kind of like what I said about Jerry Jeudy, they're not talent related. He has, with Malachi Fields, he's going to put in the work. He's going to be able to understand how to work the middle of the football field, how to sit down in zones. So I think he's much more of a big slot receiver at the next level, kind of a chain mover, but he ran a 4.61. He's not a deep threat. He's not a vertical guy. That's not what he's going to be at the NFL level. But I think he just has a high floor. At that size, he had a 6.98 3-cone, really good number for a guy 218 pounds. So that's kind of the type of wide receiver you're getting. Possession, underneath, over the middle of the football field. And I think in that role, he'll be good.
And he was not used like that in Notre Dame.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we have to project a role change for Malachi Fields in order for him to have success. I mean, I'm with you. I really like that 6.98 3-cone at his size. He's 6'4.5", 218. He did win downfield in college, but he would disappear for long stretches. I think that was due to the way that he was used.
Yes.
But it would be like, where is Malachi Fields? I mean, you would just wonder where he's gone for quarters on end. I don't know. Maurice Stovall, like is he another Maurice Stovall? I mean, Maurice Stovall was a pure perimeter receiver who he never got a chance to play on the interior of the offense. Maybe Malachi Fields will.
All right. This next guy, Renner, I've not heard anyone talk about. I know I'm not as deep into this stuff as you guys are, but Cyrus Allen out of Cincinnati is someone that I have not heard very many people talk about at all as a prospect. Go ahead on Cyrus Allen out of Cincy.
I hadn't either, and I watched him pretty late. I watched him actually after the Senior Bowl, and I was floored. This guy gets open. I have him in my C tier towards the back end, right ahead of Chris Bell, but he's a separator and really good at it. And then he goes and tests at his pro day because he actually wasn't even a combine invite. And he tested really, really well. He ran a 4.49. He had an 11-foot broad jump. He had a 4.17 shuttle, a 6.9 3-cone. And at 5'11", 183, he doesn't have great size, but he has bigger wingspan than that, 6'2" wingspan. And I thought he caught the ball well. And you see him at the top of the routes just leave guys in the dust. I mean, his ability to explode out of his breaks. You see the 11-foot broad jump there consistently on tape. And now he's mainly a slot receiver. Wasn't incredibly productive over his career as a fifth-year guy, but he trends more towards, again, the type of wide receiver I like, the separators. And over the course of his career, I like the physicality for a 183 wide receiver that he plays with. He was 21 of 38 in contested catches over the course of his career. That's, for smaller wide receivers, and especially in that mold of separators, you pretty much, I want to see guys who are competitive at the catch point, because that sinks a lot of guys at the NFL level. If you can't make plays through contact, you can't work the middle of the field in the NFL, you ain't even going to see the field. But he could. And so I'm just, he's back end of the top 100 guy for me, but I would take him at that range. And I think he's a little bit, I think he even has a higher ceiling than some of these guys that are in this C tier with him.
Okay. Two more here to get to, a couple off the board guys. Taylon Green. Okay, I believe this guy was a quarterback, but then he goes to the combine, 6'6", 227, ran a 4.36 with a 43.5. I don't even know if that's real. 6'6", 227, 4.36 with a 43.5-inch vertical here. I guess he's trying to convert to wide receiver for the NFL level. Renner, go ahead on Taylon Green.
Well, technically, he's not trying to convert to the wide receiver. I'm trying to convert him to wide receiver. This guy, I've watched him play quarterback, unfortunately, and he's just not. Right? He's inaccurate. There's big issues on his tape as a pure passer, but these are Terrell Pryor numbers. And Terrell Pryor, within 1 year of switching wide receiver, was 1,000-yard wide receiver. And these are probably even better than Terrell Pryor numbers, right? 4.36, 43.5-inch vertical, 11.2 broad jump, and he has a 6'11 wingspan. I mean, a truly one-of-one athlete. And this isn't just, where did those numbers come from? You see him out in the open field, and he'll be one-on-one with the defensive back, and they won't even touch him. He has the ability to really move. And I assume, most quarterbacks can catch, right? It's a position that takes coordination. I think he'd be able to do it very quickly. I'm just so intrigued by what this guy could be at wide receiver, because these are truly one-of-one testing numbers for a guy that size. So I would take him top of C tier for me. I would, having never seen him play wide receiver, I would still take this guy at that range, because that's what, wide receiver is an athletic position. Traits like that make your job a lot easier.
I didn't realize that was what was going on here. I thought he was actually converting to wide receiver. I didn't know that Renner was converting him to wide receiver for him. I didn't realize that's what we were doing here. Okay, now I know. All right. Last guy was the one that I added to the list. This was actually not on Renner's submission. I added it because I thought this guy was interesting. Ted Hurst, 6'4", 206, out of Georgia State. The narrative out there, Renner, is that if Ted Hurst had gone to Georgia instead of Georgia State, people would be talking about him as a day one or day two type of wide receiver. Strikes me you don't buy that, but yeah, go ahead on Ted Hurst.
I struggle with that. I mean, he didn't even crack 1,000 yards at Georgia State, right? And that was a pass heavy offense. Like he not like this was a run heavy offense, and 900 yards the past 2 years was good. It's like, no, they were passing over. He was on the field for over 400 snaps of pass plays the last 2 years, and still this was his production numbers. I just think he's clunky. He has the great testing numbers at 6'3", 200 pounds, but on the field, I see a guy who struggles to get off the line of scrimmage consistently. I think against press coverage, he gets beat up, and he doesn't have great ball skills either. So he's a D tier for me. He's an interesting project because he's still young and he was productive and the testing numbers are so great. But I see a guy who at the Senior Bowl looked like he was struggling against, NFL corners, and who just has real areas for development on his tape. So for all those reasons, he's D tier for me, but he very easily could go higher than that given how athletic he is.
All right. Stand down, Ted Hurst stands. Leave Renner alone. It's his opinion. There's a hive out there of Ted Hurst fans that are going to be coming. All right. That's going to do it for our tiers here at wide receiver. Renner did not have any S tier wide receivers in this class. A tier in order: Tyson, Concepcion, Tate, Lemon, Cooper. B tier: Bernard, Antonio Williams, Denzel Boston, Thompson, Zachariah Branch. C tier: the guy that Renner is converting for him. Renner's spoken to his agent and his whole team, and they are going to listen to Renner. Green, Fields, Brazzell, Allen, Chris Bell, and then the D tier, not related to Fred Durst, but yes, Mr. Ted Hurst. All right, we'll be back for Renner's rankings, tiers, and breakdown at wide receiver, quarterback, and tight end. Be sure you are subscribed here on YouTube or anywhere podcasts are found. Renner, tell the people where they can find you and where they can find your work.
You can find me on X at Mike Renner _. You can find my big board over on cbssports.com. And you can find my podcast over at Push the Pile.
Yes. And if you'd like to see Renner's history of takes on players, it's all on YouTube. YouTube lives forever. So go back to last year's show. Check out Renner's takes from there if you want. I actually find myself doing that sometimes just because I find it fascinating how players end out in the NFL versus what people thought of them coming in. All right. For Renner, for Silva, producer Luke, producer Ryan, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.